House Bill 310. Chairman Powell, I think, just entered the room. Chairman Powell, if you'd come on up. Mr. Chairman, let me ask you to pull the mic toward you, that one right there. And I know we have a substitute in the folder of LC 296496 ECS. Are there any substantive changes from what we looked at last week? Council, you want to walk us through that? Thank you, Mr. Travis. Appreciate that. Let me, Mr. Wardy, I know obviously not part of the administration, but can I speak to you for purposes of getting your take on the changes, meet up? I just wanted to. That's a first. I'd play some hold music right now, but I don't have any. It's all right. No, I'm happy to do so. I just wanted to make sure. It was looking around. I understand, obviously, with the State Bar, but obviously you're co-chair of the Criminal Justice Reform Council. The changes, as outlined by council, I assume the administration is comfortable with those.
It's an ongoing effort to reach consensus on this bill.
There you go.
Following these edits, I think that's a continuation.
Okay. Any comments by the author? Chairman Powell? None? Questions for the committee, either probably for council or for Mr. Worthy or Judge Boggs on the changes? Seeing none, what's the pleasure of the committee? Mr. Coomer moves due pass of House Bill 310 LC 296496 ECS. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Hightower. Are there any amendments? Seeing none, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the gentleman's motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Thank you, Chairman Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and ladies and gentlemen of the committee.
Mr. Evstration, you have Senate Bill 328. Oh, House Bill, sorry. Boy, that's bad. That is really bad. House Bill 328. It's my understanding, if we can maintain some order, hello? If we could just maintain the quiet in the committee room, I'd sure appreciate it. I know what Mr. Evstration would. Mr. Evstration, I understand that there's a substitute. Is that substitute available yet?
It should be, Mr. Chairman. It was dropped. I don't know if the committee has it.
What is the LC number that you have for your...
6494 ECS. No.
Do we have that? Okay. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to... Let's use the time. I want you to go ahead and... We'll get the sub. Members have to be able to take a look at the sub. Walk us through... I know there were some issues and some questions within the sub. What I want you to do is to walk us through what's in and what's out.
Okay.
And then hopefully by the time you're done with that and responding to any questions, again, not having the sub in front of us, my hope is that the sub will be here. If it's not here, then we'll suspend consideration of 310 temporarily. We'll take Mr. Belton, we'll dispose of his matter, and then we'll come back to you, and hopefully the sub will be ready. Hold on a second. Okay. Mr. Evstration.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to provide a brief overview, I want to make sure that this is comprehensive of the entire... for CPDs to follow. The General Assembly has shown a real commitment to circuit public defenders and to indigent defense with a almost $50 million appropriation. Additionally, the important responsibilities and jobs that circuit public defenders are conducting around the state is being considered as part of this bill, as well as a support expressed from, as I understand, a majority of circuit public defenders. I've also passed around a press release which was issued last week by the council to provide an overview of the consideration that was given to the language that was originally introduced. So that's a summary of what's been changed and the work that's been done in consultation with those that had reviewed the legislation.
Okay, so my understanding is, just to be clear, that some of the areas having to do with the public defender statute that got some conversation, that those have been essentially removed. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What I want to do is this. I know we have some people who've got to get to an appropriations subcommittee at 2 o'clock, right? So what I'm going to do is, since the sub is pending, I'm going to suspend on 328 right now. We need to get Mr. Belton out the door by the time these folks leave at 2, and then as soon as we get, then we'll suspend, we'll get the sub to a time certain, and then we'll go ahead and take a motion on the sub.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let me ask Mr. Belton if he would to come forward on 103. Just trying to be as efficient with people's time as I can. Trained conductor. Let me tell you, members of the committee, where we are with House Bill 103. House Bill 103, this is the sub. I want to make sure I'm saying this right. This is the substitute LC 296433S that passed out of the committee. Is that all right? Is that a correct statement?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The last week during the logistical back and forth related mostly due to the weather, there was a request by a member of the Rules Committee, I understand, to have the committee take another look at the issue of merger, and that's on line 41 and 42 of the bill. And the bill was recommitted with the request, and I want to say the request, that the committee take a look at the merger issue on lines 41 and 42. And what I committed to do is I'd go ahead and let the committee decide how it wanted to handle that issue. My sense of it is that the committee made a policy decision, given the subject matter we're talking about, crime, this of course is a crimes against children, to, on purpose, include language that would not allow for merger, in large part due to the desire, or at least to position the bill such that when you had an individual, especially a person on a first offense who was which was a misdemeanor, to allow for the possibility of greater or longer supervision, because we're talking about an offender, I would think that may need a little longer supervision, and by virtue of not having a merger possibility there, that afforded the court the ability to tack on some time, frankly, for some supervision, if they thought that the supervision was necessary. And that's if the charge was even brought. And if that's certainly the prosecutor doesn't have to bring that charge if in their discretion they don't feel that's the right thing to do. But I said I'd go ahead and open that up for conversation to the committee, to get the committee's thought on that in preparation for a motion. So with that, what I want to do is just open it up to discussion for the committee. If the committee has any comments on that issue that may agree with what we did how we acted previously, or it may not. But I wanted to afford that opportunity now before asking for a motion on 103. So with that, let me open the floor for any discussion or not to members of the committee. Mr. Coomer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for purpose of discussion, I think as a philosophy, I'd prefer to have judges with more discretion in these areas. You may have a case that has a single violation of somebody, or maybe 2 or 3 images that has gotten themselves in some trouble, but is not the kind of person we want to necessarily keep under supervision for 10 or 15 years. So by eliminating the judge's discretion in this case, you may wind up creating a more heavy-handed approach than is necessary in a given situation. That's why we have judges to mete out justice in individual cases, and we don't just decide all the cases here in the code. So for my sort of perspective and philosophy of how we want judges to behave, I'd rather give them more discretion and not require or not bar merger in all cases.
Setzler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the things that I think was fleshed out pretty well by the subcommittee was there's such a broad range of behavior that could be prosecuted this way. There's youthful indiscretions that are in very, very bad taste that need to be able to be prosecuted. And then there's real, what we would consider bona fide, substantial, consistent criminal behavior that we would want to absolutely just drop the bomb on, even for a first offense or series of actions. And I just say that sort of parenthetically to perhaps echo what Representative Coomer said, was there is the nature of these is there's a very broad range of circumstances. That I think the sense of the subcommittee was we want to make sure we can hammer this if it's very serious, if it meets the elements of this, but is more of a sort of intercollegiate bad joke. It needs to be able to be prosecuted, but perhaps if it's done 2 or 3 times, do we give judges discretion or not? That's the open question. And I don't. We certainly, as a subcommittee, didn't dwell on this particular issue. I think that was Representative Willard, or Chairman Willard's concern. But I mean, I think it's a. I do think the nature of these is there's a broad range of behavior that could be prosecuted and should be prosecuted by this that perhaps ought to be part of the conversation.
I appreciate the gentleman's comment, and to Representative Coomer's comment, I hear what you're saying. Of course, we are, we're also looking at the possibility, in terms of prosecutorial discretion, where that particular charge may not come at all. But if it does come, we do want to have the possibility, and given the subject matter involved, my sense from a policy standpoint is that we were erring toward the side of broader supervision, especially on a first where you're looking at a misdemeanor. Again, given the nature of the underlying crime that we're talking about, if we were talking about traffic, well, we wouldn't be having this conversation, obviously, on a lesser crime, for lack of a better term. But Mr. Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would actually like to keep it a separate offense and leave the prosecutorial discretion on a charge, particularly because the nature of the crime is such that when you're talking about internet images and names, those tend to last forever, and it has to be treated a little bit differently than what we would regularly treat in crime. So I would prefer that the committee consider passing the bill out exactly the way we've done, having considered the concerns raised by Representative Coomer and Representative Setzler. I do think this is a growing problem. I think we're going to see more and more of it, and I think it sends a particular message when we pass language containing 41 and 42 that we want to consider it as separate, that it's something that we want to battle.
Can I make a statement, Mr. Chairman?
Very briefly, if you could. We can get to a motion on your bill.
Yes, sir. Again, most internet sex crimes involve minors, and 82% of the time, the offender used the internet in order to find the minor. So this is a significant problem.
Thank you. What's the pleasure of the committee? Do pass by Ms. Dickerson, a second by Ms. Kendrick. Are there any amendments?
I offer an amendment.
Fire away.
I offer an amendment to strike the language in lines 41 and 42.
Mr. Coomer offers an amendment on HB 103 LC 296433S to strike lines 41 and 42 and renumber and letter accordingly. Any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all in favor of the gentleman's amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it, and the amendment fails. Are there any further amendments? Seeing none on the underlying motion of do pass by substitute, LC 296433S, all in favor of the gentlelady's motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted. Thank you, Mr. Belton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, you have in front of you the substitute to HB 328, LC 296494-ECS. That's the correct substitute, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We've heard the author's description of the bill and more importantly, the roadmap of how it differs from the underlying, from the substitute, I should say, of what you saw and we discussed last week. Are there any, before we get to a motion, are there any last questions or issues for the author? Seeing none, what's the pleasure of the committee? Mr. Strickland moves due pass of HB 328, LC 296494 ECS.
Yes, sir.
Second by the Vice Chairman, Representative Pack. Are there any amendments? Seeing none, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the gentleman's motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have, and the motion is adopted. The full committee will be meeting on Wednesday at our regular time. Agenda will be forthcoming this afternoon. Anything from the committee? Mr. Setzler.
Just remember, the subcommittee is going to be meeting tomorrow afternoon at 4:30, 4:30 to 6. This is the time of the year we're going to be working a little bit later. We do have 3 bills under consideration, so I just offer that to the members.
Thank you, Chairman Setzler. Mr. Pack.
The PAC subcommittee will be meeting at 1:30 or upon adjournment, whichever is later. We have 3 bills as well.
Is that tomorrow?
Yes, tomorrow, including 244, which is the sex trafficking bill. A minor.
Thank you, members of the committee. We're adjourned.